Well, we're still here at SARS in Pretoria, and of course the President giving the keynote address at the celebration of the 25 years Jubilee celebration, Silver Jubilee celebration of SARS. Apparently the organisation or the institution has raised over 18 trillion rand in the 25 years, and of course that will have gone to funding all of the imperatives that government sets out with the mandate of the people of South Africa. What was key in the President's message was that the government would continue to support SARS in ensuring that it has the capability to continue collecting taxes so that the government can apply the funds to the mandate that's been given to it by the people. And the other thing as well, of course, reflecting on state capture and how it derailed the progress of SARS, saying that with the application of the Nugent Commission's recommendations, in large part, of course, there's some that have still not yet been fully pushed through, that has helped the organisation to now begin to restore itself to its former glory, but it's still getting there, so to speak. Well, I have with me the SARS Commissioner, Edward Kieswetter, just to give us his view on today, and of course he's in celebratory mode. Thank you very much, Mr. Kieswetter, for joining us. Of course, it's a day of celebration. Over 18 trillion rand has been given over to the national government to fund the imperatives in the country. Quite significant day.
Of course, it's a wonderful day. It's always nice to have birthdays, no matter how many you've had, and especially to celebrate the birthday of SARS as what I call one of the crown jewels in our democracy. If you will allow me to say, as I've said before, it's wonderful and evocative when we sing the national anthem. We feel proud when we stand next to our flag, but our democracy would be rendered paralyzed if government and the state did not have the financial resources. That's what underlines the true integrity of our sovereignty. So if you want to understand the important role of SARS, you have to get that it is through the work of SARS that 90% of government's funding requirements is provided for. It also means that South Africa does not appear on the long list of countries in Africa and around the world who are labeled as highly indebted poor countries. We actually can proudly hold our own that we are substantively have fiscal integrity. And with the Minister, also to his credit, in the last 2 cycles, I've taken some of the surplus and over-collection of SARS to begin to chip away at that nasty thing called debt service costs.
Indeed. Now, of course, one of the things that the President touched on was state capture, saying that SARS was in a terrible place when you took over in 2019. How far have we come? We know that the Nugent Commission made recommendations. Many of those have been implemented. What's outstanding? And do you think that we're on a better footing as South Africa when it comes to our tax collecting institution?
Unambiguously, I can say that we are in a significantly better place than where we were in 2018, for a number of reasons. I think firstly, the Nugent Commission gave a message, not just a diagnostic message of what had happened to SARS, but also a set of clear recommendations of what needed to be done to address the demise and the dismantling of SARS's capability and integrity. And so we can report to South Africans that we have substantively introduced, or rather substantively implemented these recommendations. But the rebuilding of SARS is not about going through a list of recommendations. It's about understanding that it is an organism, that in 2018 the organization felt pain. The people were disheartened. There was a disconnect between leadership and the staff. And when the social fiber of an institution is destroyed, that takes years to rebuild. Technology and data is easy to fix. You need money and skills. We also are rebuilding the technical competencies, rehiring people not just in technical areas as before, in forensic investigation and technical areas like transfer pricing and base erosion practices, and in customs area, but also looking towards the future, data scientists, social behavioral scientists, because ultimately the success of our work requires us to use the data and from it to derive insights around the behavioral profile of every taxpayer. Because we don't want to enforce compliance on 60 million South Africans. We want most South Africans, whom we believe to be honest, to receive a seamless experience. And to do that well, we will educate them, we will raise the awareness of the obligation, and we will lower the burden of compliance. We'll use data and technology to create a seamless experience for many. That work is making steady progress. But we also use data science to sift through, to collect millions and millions of bytes of data, and to detect risk, to detect instances of non-compliance. And we make no apology that when we find you as a non-compliant taxpayer, to make it hard and to make it costly. And we do that in the service of the honest taxpayers.
Commissioner, of course you have a strategy and you're telling us what you're implementing and how you're trying to bolster the institution. But I think what's really worrying South Africans right now is the fact that you have had a number of challenges. We know that you had some wage disputes and there were strikes at SARS and that inhibited you from doing your work. And now we've got this Transnet strike and no one can see the end in sight. How is this affecting your work, especially when it comes to the imports and export situation, because you are our customs office?
I think that's very important. SARS is part of a system of government and part of an ecosystem of fiscal integrity. And so, yes, a strike at Transnet will have material impact on the efficiency of our ports, which are already struggling with inefficiencies and already have infrastructure capacity and capability challenges. So this just adds to that. I wish for the day when our trade unions can sit around the table and instead of making demands that will be good for their members or our employees, tries to balance the interest of all South Africans, all stakeholders. And I think there's an opportunity, a huge opportunity. We engage very frankly and honestly with our own trade union leaders. And I invite them to work with us to see how do we get the best for our employees without hurting our mandate, because that then impacts through to the very South Africans whose interests we purport to be protecting. I think the traditional adversarial reproach between Labour and government or Labour and the employer no longer serve the best interests of us as South Africans. I'm encouraged that the union leaders within SARS, they understand this message, and I'm encouraged by the progress we are making. Right now, to be an institution where we have agreed to accept 1.5% increase. It is unheard of. And it's not because we are exploiting our employees. It's because we are taking them along with us and say, let's live within our means. Let's look at the other things we can do, non-financial benefits, to give you a better deal. But we can't do it if we treat each other as adversaries or as enemies. We have to sign up to a collective cause that always acts in the best interest of our organization, of our country. And if we do that well, it will counterintuitively also serve our narrow interests the best way.
Mr. Kieswetter, thank you very much for your time. Commissioner Edward Kieswetter there speaking to us. He does say that the current strike at Transnet will have a material impact on the work of SARS to do its work efficiently and obviously to collect revenue, which is so much needed for the country's imperatives. But he does say that the time has changed in this time where things are tough for everyone, where everybody needs to be a bit more amenable to negotiation. That, of course, is his view.